The courtroom was quiet and formal as Bailiff Jenkins called out, "All rise." The United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable Judge Patricia Holloway presiding. Case number 2024 Caro 4471. The United States versus Nicholas James Carter. Judge Holloway, a sharp and experienced woman in her late 50s, settled into her chair and adjusted her glasses. "Be seated, everyone. Mr. Marsh, Miss Voss, are both parties ready to proceed?" Both attorneys confirmed they were, and the judge nodded. "Miss Voss, you may begin." Prosecutor Angela Voss stood and addressed the court with confidence. "Your Honor, on the morning of October 14th, at approximately 7:42 am, 17-year-old Nicholas Carter was found operating a motor vehicle on West Madison Street without a valid driver's license. He has never passed a driver's examination. He had no permit, and yet he chose to get behind the wheel of a 2,000-pound vehicle on a public road. The arresting officer, Officer Thomas Reed, will testify to what he witnessed firsthand. The prosecution asks this court to hold Nicholas Carter accountable not to destroy a young life, but to send a clear message. Our roads have rules, and those rules exist to protect every single person on them. She sat down calmly. Defense attorney David Marsh rose next, speaking in a measured and steady tone. "Your Honor, the defense does not dispute the facts. Nicholas Carter did drive that vehicle. We are not here to argue otherwise. What we are here to do is give this court the full picture, the context, the character, and the circumstances of a 17-year-old boy who made a poor decision for what he believed was a very good reason. Nick is not a criminal. He's a teenager who panicked in a moment of family crisis, and we ask this court to see the whole person, not just the mistake." He sat beside Nick and gave him a reassuring nod. Miss Voss then called Officer Thomas Reed to the stand. He was a man in his mid-40s, calm and professional, walking to the witness box with the quiet confidence of someone who had done this many times before. After being sworn in, he explained clearly, "I was on routine patrol on West Madison Street around 7:40 am. I noticed a silver Honda Civic drifting slightly between lanes, not recklessly, but inconsistently. The driver appeared to be gripping the wheel very tightly. I ran the plates and they came back clean, registered to a Miss Linda Carter. I conducted a traffic stop as a precaution." When asked what he found, Officer Thomas continued, "I found a young man behind the wheel. He was nervous. I asked for his license and registration. He handed me the registration but told me right away, no hesitation, he said, 'Officer, I don't have a license. I know I shouldn't be driving. I'm sorry.' I asked why he was driving, and he told me his mother had fallen and was in pain and he was trying to reach a pharmacy 6 blocks away to pick up her medication. I verified the story, it checked out, but I still cited him because regardless of the reason, operating a vehicle without a license is against the law. My job is to enforce the law fairly, and that means everyone, every time." Defense attorney Marsh then cross-examined Officer Thomas, asking whether Nick had posed any immediate danger to other drivers. Officer Thomas answered honestly, "He was driving cautiously. No speeding, no aggressive maneuvers. But inexperienced drivers are unpredictable. That's the concern." Marsh then referenced Officer Thomas's own written report. "You described Nick as cooperative, remorseful, and respectful. Your words, correct?" Officer Thomas replied without hesitation, "I did write that, because it's true." The judge thanked Officer Thomas as he stepped down, and he took a quiet seat in the gallery. Nick was then called to the stand. He was 17, wearing a neat button-down shirt, visibly nervous but doing his best to hold himself together. His mother, Linda Carter, sat in the front row of the gallery with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When his attorney asked him to describe what happened that morning, Nick took a breath and spoke honestly. "My mom, she has a bad knee. She had a fall the night before and woke up in a lot of pain. She needed her medication and the pharmacy was only about 6 blocks away. She tried to get up but she couldn't really walk. I called my uncle, no answer. I tried our neighbor, Mr. Pacheco, he wasn't home. I just panicked. I thought, it's 6 blocks, early morning. I'll go slow and be careful." Marsh asked if he'd driven before, and Nick admitted, "Only once in an empty parking lot. My uncle let me try about a year ago. That was it." When his attorney asked whether he now understood why his actions were wrong, Nick nodded slowly and said, Yes, sir. I keep thinking about what could have happened. There were other cars on the road. There could have been kids walking to school. I was only thinking about my mom and not about everyone else. That was selfish of me, even if I didn't mean it to be. His voice cracked slightly as he added, I'm sorry. Every single day. I'm sorry. Prosecutor Voss cross-examined Nick firmly but without cruelty. You had a cell phone with you that morning? She asked. Yes, ma'am, Nick replied. Did you try calling 911? A ride share? A taxi? Nick paused and then answered quietly. No, ma'am. I didn't think of it fast enough. I just reacted. Voss pressed gently. So, there were other options available to you. Nick looked down and said, Yes, there were. I see that now. Voss paused, softened slightly, and said, No further questions. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as Judge Holloway reviewed her notes. Then she removed her glasses and spoke not just as a judge, but as someone who had seen enough of life to know the difference between a criminal and a kid who made a mistake. I have sat on this bench for 19 years, she said. I have seen young people come to this courtroom who showed no remorse and no willingness to learn. You are not that person, Nick. Officer Reed's report speaks clearly. You were honest from the very first moment. That matters. She put her glasses back on and her tone turned firm. However, it does not change the law. Driving without a license is a public safety issue. Every year, inexperienced and unlicensed drivers contribute to thousands of accidents across this country. When you got behind that wheel, you made a decision that affected every person in your path, whether you intended harm or not. Judge Holloway then delivered her ruling. Nicholas James Carter, this court finds you responsible for operating a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license. However, given your age, your clean prior record, your immediate honesty with Officer Reed, your genuine remorse, and the non-criminal nature of your motivation, this court sentences you as follows. A fine of $500 to be fulfilled through 60 hours of community service within 6 months. Mandatory enrollment in a state-approved driver's education program. A 6-month suspension from eligibility to apply for a driver's permit. And 1 year of supervised good conduct, with no further violations. She looked directly at Nick and added, This record can be expunged when you turn 18, provided you complete all requirements and stay out of trouble. This does not have to define you, but you have to decide that. She then turned to Officer Thomas and said, Officer Reed, I want to commend you. You enforced the law with fairness and without cruelty. You documented the truth accurately and completely. That is exactly what this system needs more of. Officer Thomas stood briefly and replied simply, Thank you, Your Honor. I just called it like I saw it. The judge almost smiled. That's all any of us can ask. She addressed the full courtroom one final time. Let this case be a reminder to every young person in this country. The law is not your enemy. It is your protection. And the honest thing to do when you make a mistake is exactly what Nick did. Own it. Learn from it. And do better. The gavel came down with a sharp bang. Nick exhaled slowly. Linda reached over the gallery railing and pulled her son into a tight hug, her eyes filled with tears of relief. As Officer Thomas passed by on his way out, he paused for just a moment, looked at Nick, and gave him a brief, respectful nod. Nick nodded back, grateful, humbled, and just a little bit wiser than he had been that morning on West Madison Street.